Hey, Baron.
Hey, Dean.
Okay, so welcome back, by the way. First ever episode where we have not just one, but two returning guests. So I love that. Okay, so first of all, let folks watching know a little bit about you, and then I have a question for you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dean, for having me back, by the way.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. I'm Belalov. I've been in marketing for almost a decade as a fractional CMO and as an agency owner. I've worked with over 100 clients to date, and we just calculated that we've generated over $72 million in new revenues for businesses. Last time I was on the podcast, that was 65, 66.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm probably the biggest fan of electronic music you'll ever see in a marketing podcast. So that's me.
Okay, so here's my question. It's a little different than last time. First of all, can you tell me? I have this other sort of series now where we go live, and it has a very simple, straightforward title. It's "Please Explain Marketing to Dean." And CMOs come on, and I have them explain, like I'm 9 years old, what direct response is, or what is voice of customer research, or what is whatever, like KPI metrics and NPS. So I like these really simple questions now. So, like, what is a fractional CMO? And what is a fractional CMO?
Sure. A fractional CMO is somebody who is essentially responsible for all of your marketing outcomes. So they're a marketing executive that comes into the business. They focus on understanding the business and the customers deeply, understanding what's going on with the marketing team, the various vendor and service provider relationships, and just figuring out, how everyone can put their best foot forward.
Okay. So let's set up a hypothetical, the standard hypothetical for this podcast. Today's day one of a brand new client engagement that's going to last a year. Okay. You've signed the paperwork. Today's first day of work. Probably going to have your first meetings, right? What do you try to achieve? Or what do you normally see or try to do in the first 90 days? What's the first 3 months look like?
A good question. So I actually do something interesting in day one that not everyone likes to do, not a lot of CMOs, but for starters, if I am to be responsible for all marketing outcomes, then on day one, naturally my focus should be on understanding the business and customers deeply. So something that I like to do personally before introducing myself to other people in the organization I haven't already spoken to is to actually go through the customer journey myself so that I can understand what the experience is like. So I'm kind of like an undercover customer or client. I ask myself questions like, what are the bottlenecks? Where could I have dropped off? What could be improved to keep me engaged or further engage me, right? Upsell me. What is the post-purchase experience like? Would I want to refer somebody else to the business based on my experience? And then after that, I meet with key stakeholders that I haven't already met, the marketing team, the sales team, the customers, even to understand their perspectives and goals. I plan to conduct an audit of existing marketing strategies, campaigns, and performance metrics, analyze market conditions, competitor strategies, right? Identify immediate opportunities and threats too. But day one, I'm an undercover client or customer, and I actually love that exercise so much. And I, couldn't recommend it more for other CMOs, even other executives like sales executives coming into a business to go through and understand, what that really feels like to be in the shoes of the customer or the client.
Right on. I imagine like a dramatic meeting where you walk in at the table and you drop like a bunch of paper and say, I know stuff you don't know.
Yeah, and it's good to record these things too. It certainly helps a lot.
For evidence in court? Yeah, absolutely. I believe it. Yeah, sure. No problem. Hey, Amanda.
Hey, Dean.
Amanda, welcome back. Can you let folks know a little bit about you and then talk about those first 90 days when you started engagement?
Sure. And again, thank you for having me
Sure.
back. I was just thinking as Baron was answering how as much as your audience probably benefits from these, I always learn something from my colleague who's on the call. So interesting to hear how Baron starts off an engagement and get some ideas there. But hi, everyone. Amanda Rabideau. I'm a fractional CMO at Arch Collective. And I started Arch Collective in November of 2019. Prior to that, I was in marketing and innovation at CoreLogic, which is one of the largest providers of real estate data and analytics.
Right.
And since starting Arch Collective, I've worked with a few dozen startups at this point to build out their data-driven marketing engine and marketing strategy. I have what I call the Collective, which is my network of freelance marketers and creatives that help me execute on that strategy and build the data-driven marketing engine. And because of my experience at CoreLogic, a lot of my clients are in the property and casualty insurtech space, the prop tech space, but I do dabble with other clients that are B2B tech startups. And so to get to the good stuff around what happens in those first 90 days, I have a framework that I call the Arch Way. And basically it follows 4 steps. And not necessarily all of these get done in the first 90 days, but it's first assess, then build, then launch, and then optimize. And so in those first 90 days, and I'd say even in that first day, kind of going back to Baron talking about diving into the customer journey, that first day, a lot of what it is around educating the client on what the fractional CMO is going to do. Because while I may have had a point of contact throughout the sales process to get the client, once I'm in there, it's been a rare experience that anyone's worked with a fractional executive before. Or at that point, the marketing function probably hasn't received a lot of attention or a lot of love, which is why I'm there to help build that strategy, amplify the brand, elevate the marketing function within the organization.
Right.
And so, at the beginning, it's a lot of, hey, this is what a fractional CMO is. So answering that original question, Dean, and then setting the stage. And a lot of the assessment phase is exactly what Baron talked about, which is setting up those voice of client interviews, understanding the client journey, getting under the hood of what's actually been happening, understanding what their current brand is, and then starting to put the strategy in place for how we're going to take the company from where they are that day to where they want to be in that goal that we aligned on during the sales process.
All right, then thank you. Amanda, stay with me for a second. So let's imagine that I'm the CEO at your client company, okay?
Okay.
So I had to, at some point, get someone to agree to allocate spend for a year of fractional CMO time, right? Either a board or investors or the leadership team, or even just myself, me and the other dean, who always never wants to spend, on this, but wants to spend on silly stuff. I said, no, we need a fractional CMO for this, right? Mr. Co-CEO in my head. So so let me ask you this question, and you can answer it in one of 2 ways. You can either tell me how, as CEO, I'm going to get maximum value over the next 12 months from that fractional CMO that I've hired, or if you want to do it from the CMO's perspective, right? How do CEOs and companies waste the money that they spend on fractional CMOs? What do they do or not do that ends up muting the effectiveness of the person they're just spending the money on?
Yep. I can probably pretty quickly answer both sides of that question, because first and foremost, the getting the value out of the CMO, that starts from the beginning of the conversation. So kind of going back to how I tee up those first days where I'm at a client, when I go into any sort of engagement, I already know this is where we are today and this is where we're going, and that end state goal, those are my KPIs. That is my critical mission that I am there to accomplish. And if we can't align on that before I've started that engagement, then I don't think we're starting off on a great foot, right? Because now certainly there's engagements where it's like, hey, bring me in and I'll help you understand what needs to happen, and we build something, and that's part of the engagement. But oftentimes, at least in my sales process, we have already discussed where they are and where it is that we're trying to get. And then what I'm there to do is that gap, is filling in that gap of getting us from A to Z or A to B or whatever the goal may be. So I would say the earlier you can align on objectives and get on the same page, the more likely that there will be success in that engagement. On the flip side, where I see clients not getting the most out of a fractional CMO, I would boil it down to two things. The first being they don't include them in strategic conversations and they
Right.
treat them like an outside consultant. So what I mean by that is if you have weekly, monthly, whatever executive leadership meetings, bring that fractional executive in, because if you're only giving them a little bit of information, they're not going to be technically that executive you need, right? They're more of just a project manager. So the more you can incorporate them into your regular strategic discussions, the more you're going to get out of that fractional executive. And the second piece is giving them the autonomy and the authority to do what you brought them in to do. And I get it. It can be scary, especially if you're a founder of a startup where you built this company and it's your baby. And so giving a very public facing piece of it over to someone else to drive the strategy could be a little bit scary. But if you're not willing to let the expert in marketing be the expert in marketing, then you might want to rethink, why is it that you're hiring a fractional CMO? Maybe there's a different solution or a different type of hire that's going to be a better fit if you're not willing to do that.
All right. And Baron, what about you? Imagine, let's put it in like one-to-one terms, okay? You've got a best friend who's also a fractional CMO, and they come to you and they say, man, like, I mean, the money's good and the work's interesting, but like, there's no way these guys are getting maximum value out of me because what? What's that person going to say?
Yeah, so I mean, to get maximum value from an engagement with a fractional CMO, collaboration and communication are the key. So starting with clear objectives certainly helps, right? Starting with clear, mutually agreed upon objectives, setting expectations, understanding what success looks like. Because if you can't see where you're going, then you're not really going anywhere, right? So to see the path where you're headed, you have to kind of plan that out. You need to sit, have a strategic vision planning session, and understand what does that roadmap look like. And then thereafter, like I said, collaboration and communication. So scheduling regular check-ins and progress updates to ensure that we're on track and to address any challenges promptly. Facilitating that sort of feedback loop. I would also say it's very important for a CEO to empower the fractional CMO they're working with. So to have access to necessary resources and members of the team, like Amanda mentioned as well, right? Not treating them like an external consultant, but treating them as a member of the team, showing the budgets as well, everything, right? And to make decisions and implement them without excessive red tape, you have to trust the process too. But yeah, like I mentioned as well, offering constructive feedback is actually really important, right? And insights from the CEO's perspective to fine tune our approach continuously. I think those are the most important things that a CEO can do to get the maximum value of a one-year engagement with a fractional CMO.
Right. All right. Well, like I'm going to stay as being the CEO for a couple minutes longer, and here's my thing on it. Okay, so today's day one for you, but there are some staffers, some junior and sort of mid-level staffers, maybe even like a manager of marketing. But now there's never been anyone at the leadership position, so you're kind of the first there, right? So I'm looking at that team. I'm looking at that marketing department, and I'm trying to like project forward in my head. And so help me out here. How is that team going to be different or better at the end of your engagement compared to today, day one?
That's a good question. That's actually I would say the main reason that a lot of companies have hired me.
Mm-hmm.
Hiring a fractional CMO can significantly improve an existing marketing team in many ways. You get expertise, right? Bringing in high-level strategic expertise that might be lacking within the team, but that's just scraping the surface. You also get a fresh perspective. So having an outside perspective to identify blind spots and opportunities that internal teams might miss is super important, right? You might get like tunnel vision sometimes when you're working sort of within your realm. Even external service providers need that because an agency isn't typically as invested in a company's success, not as much as the employees typically are.
Right.
You also get leadership, so providing leadership, mentorship, and direction, especially during times of transition or when scaling up, is extremely important, because not having that structure can be really daunting for employees and external partners. And finally, you get efficiency, right? So streamlining processes, improving efficiency by implementing best practices, right? For example, increasing efficiency from a technology standpoint or a process standpoint helps to save money for the business, sure, but also free up time for employees so that they can have a chance to think more strategically and think more creatively, right? That can also enhance collaboration with external partners too. Like, those things pay in dividends.
Right. Amanda, what do you think? How's that team going to look different or better, or hopefully not worse?
I love
On
everything
your last day.
that Baron said. And I think some of it's individual too, to the fractional CMO. What do you bring? And so I'll speak to the feedback I've got from my clients, which oftentimes when I've gone in, the perception of marketing is a little bit more what I joke, the arts and crafts department. And one of my big goals outside of achieving the engagement goals is to elevate the perception of what marketing is, because maybe it was the arts and crafts department a few years ago or decades ago, but it certainly isn't today. I run and I build a very data-driven marketing function, and we can have revenue targets, right? We could have, a P&L that we need to manage. And so a lot of what happens when I've come in and then how it looks when I've left is that it's a data-driven function. It's got a very different perception within the organization, and we're operating based on dashboards and numbers, and it's like I said, I guess data-driven. And so the team then, I think, has the opportunity to elevate their brand within the organization. So people start to look at the marketing function with, one may say, a little bit more respect, and the team starts to stand a little bit taller because they've got all of these amazing metrics that they can show to demonstrate the actual value and how they're contributing to the organization and the growth of that company.
Okay. So Amanda, imagine that your best friend comes to you and says, hey, Amanda, so my kid just graduated. I don't know how old your best friend is, but their kid just graduated college, just started their first ever career job in marketing, first time full-time job, right? And so they're the most junior person on the marketing team at some company. And your best friend says, now, like, I know you've told me that you're like a fractional CMO. I'm still not sure exactly what that does, but I know it's something with marketing. And so do you have any advice for someone just starting out, like my kid, and what their career is going to look like? And that company just hired a fractional CMO. Is there anything they should know? Or what should they do or not do while this fractional CMO is there?
Yep. Well, if I were to start with marketing career advice, it would be that, listen and learn a lot. I've had some marketing interns through my clients in the last few years. And while I always know that I have a lot to learn, and I've been doing this for 20 some years, I find it interesting when when these interns come in, how much they know and how much more they know than I know. At least that's the way that they present it. And so, yes, I get it. I'm not 21 years old and I'm not the youngest, hippest person, but there's a lot of wisdom and experience that I have. And I'm more than happy to share that with a marketer that wants to learn from it. And so I would say, if to anyone starting, in fact, I have a 21-year-old stepson, and it's like, learn as much as you can, say yes, and like ask good questions. Like, don't assume that you already know the answer. But when it comes specifically to a fractional CMO, it's that each organization is set up a little bit differently, right? Like, I don't typically work in an office with my clients. Now, there are certainly, I think for most of them at some point, I've been on site or I've been in front of a team. But, my clients right now, none of them have an office or are working in a space where people aren't remote. And so when it comes to fractional CMOs, and especially, and I would say this goes for junior level people and anywhere up the marketing chain, is that you really need to over communicate these days, right? And I think that as a fractional CMO, I need to do the same. So if we're not like, if you've got Slack or you've got Teams, use it as a communication channel, right? Like follow up, over communicate first, because some of the things that I've had to tell people before is, hey, when you go in and you update a document, I'm not sitting around waiting to see if that document changes. Like, let me know that you've done the work. Or before you do this, like reach out or CC me when you have followed up. And so I think that in this very heavily remote environment, certainly that I work in and a lot of my clients work in, that it never hurts to over communicate. And if you get to the point where you're over communicating, someone will tell you, hey, like you don't need to copy me in on that note, or no, at this point, like I understand you're getting done what you need to do. But I think that it's really helpful for organizations to err on the side of over communication,
Right.
rather than just assume that people are on top of things because of the work environments that we're in.
Baron, what do you think? What advice would you give the 23-year-old Baron just starting out? There's been some sort of like Star Trek timeline split, and there's two of you now, right? And there's like a 23-year-old version of you that just started as the most junior person on a marketing team. And you're like, dude, I got like 1 minute to give you advice. Here it is. What would you say?
You have a lot to gain from the presence of a fractional CMO, right? You'll learn how to strategically, think strategically about marketing, understand individual tactics that align with broader business goals. You get exposed to industry best practices and innovative techniques. Right now, I'm working with a few companies and different service providers to understand how can we best leverage AI in the process of content strategy, content development, paid media management, data analytics. And this is also benefiting the sales teams because they can use some of the tools we use for enriched outbound campaigns, for example. So understanding, how to collaborate with other teams too, and that yields problem-solving skills by observing how challenges are addressed and overcome. Like we're on the bleeding edge of adoption of AI because if we aren't, we're
Right.
guaranteed to fall behind. So not just understanding how to implement, but from a management standpoint, with the help of a fractional CMO, how does a director or manager design systems and implement processes like SOPs to make sure that our use of AI isn't harmful, first of all, but second of all, efficient and effective, and still enables and empowers the team to think critically, right? So you can learn a lot from the presence of a fractional CMO, and as a result of all of these things, naturally, a junior employee will also get more opportunities for professional growth through new learning experiences and increased responsibilities. So there's a lot to learn if you observe and take on a lot of that initiative too.
All right. So our time's winding down. I've got a couple of questions, so I'm going to just pair them up and give them to you. We'll start with you, Baron. Okay. There are easier ways to make a living, dude, than being a fractional CMO.
That's for sure.
Like, why do this job? And what question would you ask Amanda?
I'm passionate about this work because it allows me to make a tangible impact, not just in a variety of businesses across different industries, but more importantly for me, it allows me to make a tangible impact on people's lives. So I find immense satisfaction in mentoring teams and watching them evolve and succeed. Plus, the dynamic nature of the fractional CMO role keeps me constantly learning and adapting, which I find incredibly fulfilling. So that's why I do it. But Amanda, a question for you. What is the most significant transformation you've seen in a client company during your tenure as a fractional CMO? Like, what kind of key factors contributed to that success, and how did it make you feel?
That's a good one. And It's actually, I would reference a client that I'm working on right now. I started with them about a year and a half ago, and this is actually it's a private equity roll up of multiple companies. And we had a net new brand that basically we did a press release on like January 2nd of 2023. And so we were really building this brand and this business from a marketing perspective from scratch. And over that time, the way that I go back to this data driven marketing engine that I built. And this is a company where they didn't really have any baseline metrics. So it's not that I came in and it's like, we're getting X number of leads or we've got X score here. It's, we don't know. And so over the last year and a half, one, building a brand, building the story, building the visual brand, all the things around a brand, did that, started to baseline all of the different marketing functions with the appropriate KPIs. And at this point where we sit here now is we've exceeded all of our 2024 targets, and we're starting to do more on top of it because we have the data and the ability to use that to drive and make our decisions. And so when I sit down and I'm showing dashboards and talking about how marketing saw these numbers and we made these changes and this is how it's impacted these different KPIs, I mean, they had no idea that these are the types of things that marketing could even be doing. So not only have we made a big impact on the company, we've made, going back to my goal, it's like we've made a big impact on the perception of the role of marketing within a big organization. And so that's been extremely rewarding and fulfilling. And a lot of the things that marketing does contributes to the bottom line and the growth of the company. So being able to contribute to that has been very, very fulfilling and rewarding. And, I feel fortunate that I've had a long window of time, because it's taking a big, $100 million plus company that's a roll up of 7 companies and turning it into a cohesive brand and getting the outputs you want, doing that in a year and a half, no small feat, but really proud of not just what I've done, but I've had, frankly, an amazing team, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without that team. And so that all feels awesome on any given day.
And Amanda, how about you? Why do this job? And what would your question be for Baron?
I think it taps in, being a fractional CMO really taps into my entrepreneurial spirit on both sides of the equation. I get to work with founders. I get to work with entrepreneurs, right? I get to work with people that are interested in changing the world and moving quickly and doing things in a way that it's, potentially disruptive, unconventional, and not the way it's always been done. And so that fills me, that fuels me. And then on the flip side for me, I like the fact that not only am I helping these businesses grow with their marketing, but I accountant, I play HR, I'm in charge of sales, right? I get to wear all of these different hats. And I think Baron said it well, that like it's an extremely dynamic type of job or role or career, however you want to put it. And there's not really many days where I'm like, yeah, I've got this all figured out. It's like days I'm like, oh my gosh, like this has changed. Now, how do I address that? And that to me is really invigorating, and why I keep coming back to it. My question for you, Baron, is how do you decide if you have more capacity to take on more clients, right? I get asked this question a lot. And so I'm curious what you'll have to say, which is like, how many clients do you take? How do you know if you have more capacity? So that's what I would love to learn from you.
That's actually a really good question, because I sometimes you get kind of busy, like on some weeks you're a little bit too busy. Some weeks, you have a little bit more leg room. Thankfully, I have an executive assistant and marketing strategist who's just crushing it. I mean, she knows how I think by now. We've been working together for about 2 years. I think we've been working together. We've known each other for a little bit longer, but she has heard me think enough times to understand, what should I do in certain situations? What would Baron do? And she also has really helped me understand some of my blind spots. So, sometimes I just need to kind of take something off my plate, hand it over to her. Sometimes she has questions, she comes to me. But, together we have quite a bit of capacity. So that has helped actually quite a bit, having somebody else who can assist me. And yeah, it varies week to week, but here's sort of my bench line or recommendation. If I, and this is a threshold that I've set for me, if I spend more than 36 hours, then I might be too busy for when something happens and I need to spend more time for, one or two clients.
Got it.
Because sometimes instead of spending, 6 to 8 hours or 10 hours for an engaged client, I may need to spend 12, or I may need to drive somewhere, and that takes up a little bit of, time. I have to travel somewhere. I have to take time off, with another client. Maybe there's an event and the CEO and the CSO wants me there too, and I want to go and support. So there's a lot of different reasons in my experience where I've had to spend more time than I've sort of scheduled on a weekly basis for a client. But having somebody by my side, a right hand, really helps quite a bit. And as long as I'm not spending more than 36 hours, then I know I can allocate more time, whether that's 40, 45 hours. Um, yeah, that's sort of my sweet spot based on the way that I want to also live my life and
Yeah.
enjoy the lifestyle of being, a fractional CMO, having that sort of freedom, but also giving myself time to think creatively and critically. Still have time to research and think about AI, for example. How can I be ahead of what's going on and the trends? Yeah, so hope that answers the question.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So time to wind up. Baron, who should contact you and how should they do it?
Well, I have clients in quite a few different industries, real estate as well, and health, beauty, tech, fintech, insurtech. Helped a couple clients expand into other countries. Software, I have a lot of clients in software development too. They always say niche down, but I have a hard time niching down, to be honest. I actually really like working in different industries. It's never a dull moment. So any business that's generating seven figures and growing pretty fast, and maybe it feels a little bit unstructured, their marketing department, maybe they want to validate whether or not their service providers are doing a good job. I have a lot of expertise in performance marketing, so I'm able to come in and help a lot of businesses that way. Yeah.
Right. And Amanda, who should contact you these days and how should they do it?
B2B tech startup founders. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if you're in the property ecosystem, so property and casualty, insure tech, prop tech, mortgage tech, fintech, but those are typically the clients I work with, but I have other clients as well. On the other hand, I would also say if you're a marketer and you're someone that's looking to be a part of my collective, I'm open and I'm always meeting with new freelance marketers that maybe like really love being a freelancer, but they don't like all the other things that come with it and need help getting clients or need help. They just don't want to deal with billing and some of the other things. Lots of reasons to join the collective, and happy to have a conversation with you if you're interested in chatting. And the easiest way to get me, and my email address is right there in my name. There's different forums there, or you can find me on LinkedIn or X, Twitter. Lots of social media platforms. So reach out whatever way works best for you.
I've decided that Elon Musk at one point looked at the artist formerly known as Prince and decided that kind of name change would make sense for a
I know.
$40 billion company and just like make it harder and less attractive for any individual to start talking about that company anymore. Terrible marketing.
Not a great rebrand name.
No.
Right? Like didn't work, didn't land.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Amanda, so much for being here this time. Again, welcome. And thanks, Baron. Nice to see you again. And thanks, everyone. According to our analytics, there's a 99.7% chance you're watching this as a clip. And so I hope you enjoyed the clip. And there are plenty more with Amanda and Baron. So take a look around. There's loads of it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.